Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Illinois Green Party series with your hosts, David Rich and Calvin Tomashko. Calvin, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, and this is going to be neat. We're really narrowing in, and we're going to learn a lot tonight. I like
Very
it.
specific topic tonight. We have our guest, Kerston Russell, who is a board member or a trustee, if you will, of the village of Mundelein, my hometown. Kerston, how are you?
I am doing just excellent.
Good. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Kerston and I have known each other, well, I guess ever since Tina G's opened, really, a little bit after that, so about 5 years now, I think.
Something like that.
I was a bartender and he was a patron there, and we hit it off. We've always had a great time together, a very good conversation, that kind of thing. And learning that he was a village trustee, I was always kind of like, had my ear to the wall, learning what he was doing, and that kind of thing. Interested in his ideology about politics, and we've had many good conversations about that. So the reason we have you here today is because it occurred to me decades ago that this was a problem, but it just sort of like popped in my head like last week that this is a topic we should talk about. And that is, in this country, and probably most other places, I'm guessing, is that, the presidential election is super high profile and just, takes everything over when the campaign season starts, right? And the thing is that even on that level, the presidential office, the president only has a certain amount of constitutional powers, and it's really not that many. The founding fathers, right, wrong, or indifferent, made it that way because they were very anti-monarchy and they wanted to distribute the power for checks and balances purposes. One of the better parts of the Constitution is that actual element. So on that level, even the Congress and the Senate has a lot more power than the president does. However, regardless of that, what's important, I think a lot of people don't get, is that local politics is where the rubber hits the road for a lot of people. It's what affects you day to day. Now, obviously, the federal government has an important place in the, as far as international and national and that kind of thing, across state lines and everything else. But like when it comes to your roads, your schools, zoning rules, which is huge, implications on people, that's all local government, and so on and so on. Funding for local businesses and small businesses, that's all local government. I mean, you can get some from the state and so on and so forth, but you can get a lot from the local as well. I've learned that. So the importance of local politics is something I think people don't actually fully get into. So that's why we're having you on the show tonight. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
Okay. He's more brevetous than I am. Anyway, so let's start off here with, why don't you tell us about when you first got into local politics and why?
Oh, heavens.
Does that take you back?
Nobody's asked me that in quite a while. So I originally got into being an economic development commissioner, basically to try to give back to my community, get involved in the development of the business side of the community, bringing businesses to town. Mm-hmm. After spending 4 years doing that, I felt like I was getting a little bit done, but not as much as I thought I could be. So I decided to run for trustee in an effort to take it up another notch.
Yeah.
To be frank with you, what I learned is that government moves at its own speed, no matter who you are or what you do.
That is true. And probably even a slower speed on the federal level than would you say that? Would you think that's true? You think the federal government moves slower than Mundelei's local government?
I think that there are things that the federal government can do faster than local government, but mostly because local government is usually focused on development, and you start interfacing with developers and money people and all that kind of stuff, and just the sheer paper load that goes into that just takes forever. I mean, you could come to town and say, hey, I want to do this, and it could be 4 or 5 years before you actually start that project.
Oh, okay. Do you think that there's, or do you know, is there a difficulty with funding certain local projects and stuff? Like, I know that in Mundelein, there was an apartment built complex that was taken down in order to create a park and open up the view of Diamond Lake, which is a beautiful, I mean, it looks beautiful right now, but I think the park part of it was delayed, right?
Well, the reason that it was originally proposed, actually, believe it or not, came out of recommendations from the police department. The facility, the actual apartments, were not well cared for. I think you could honestly say that. I know for a fact that they were a cash business. The people who were tenants there paid cash monthly to live there. They take it over to the landlord, kind of
That's
rent
interesting.
thing. Yeah. But because of the disrepair, it also lended itself to criminal acts or situations that were less than desirable.
Right.
And so the police were often there 2 or 3 times a night, people doing things behind the building, in the building, complaints in the building. So some of it started there, and then the general attitude was that was a major intersection in town. A place where people, you come down Allenson and the first thing you see is this old apartment building, and there's some proposed state work that's going to be done in there at some point. State may or may not get around to it, but so the idea originally was to try to get control of that and open up that space so that it beautified the town.
Right.
There, many of the things that the board has done over the last few years has been an effort to try and improve the appearance of the town, and which subsequently improves the attitude of people about our town.
Right, which is the thing, and maybe we can discuss a little bit that later. But I guess my question is that was the park part of it delayed because of funding problems?
No, it wasn't bought to make it into a park.
Oh, I thought it was. Maybe I'm just
wrong.
So the project's done.
Yeah, if you were to go into the records of the meetings, I don't know if they're public yet, but you would probably find that there was differing ideas as to what to do with the land.
Oh, okay.
The original concept was just to get it opened up and clean up what some of us consider to be kind of a messy situation, and then make the town look better. Yeah. The park thing has kind of come about as a discussion item after the fact.
I got you. Okay. I get my information from bar patrons. Okay. Calvin, do you have any questions, comments, concerns?
I guess I wanted to hear just a little bit more about what it was like to run for board trustee.
Well, back when I ran for trustee, it wasn't a very contentious race.
Okay.
I think the most dramatic thing I said in the whole race is I was asked at one of our sessions where we were being interviewed. They said, "Well, why do you think you're better than or what makes you a better choice?" And I said, "I'm taller and better looking than the rest of them."
What else is there?
And to be frank with you, the job doesn't require. It requires a certain amount of intelligence, but the average person can do this job.
Sure.
So I wasn't. The running was mostly how to talk to people and let them know that you're a realist and that you're going to try and listen to them and make the best choices on the information you're getting. I wasn't one party or the other. I didn't lean one way or the other. I think one of the reporters, the night that we were being interviewed and we were asked a question that was kind of a no-win situation, and I made reference to Kobayashi Maru, and about half the audience went nuts because they recognized what that meant. And
like half the co-hosts got it here.
Yeah, because one didn't.
I know. Kobayashi Maru. You ever seen the first Star Trek movie with William Shatner?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I'll explain later. Go ahead.
Okay.
It's a scenario of no win.
Right.
No matter what you do, you can't win. And
right.
To be frank with you, there's a lot of situations in government that are really, you're not trying to win. You're just trying to, get as equal a balance as you can. So it was a reference to the fact that it's a no-win scenario.
Got it.
If you're going to try to win at something, it doesn't work. You can't keep all the people happy that way.
Right.
I see.
Yeah. So, Calvin, if you don't have any more questions immediately, I got one.
Just to play off of it, the doggies.
I have a dog that is very protective. Sorry about that, guys.
No worries. So when you ran for this position, it was nonpartisan. Was that by choice or?
No, well, trustees are supposed to be nonpartisan. It's not supposed to be a politically aligned situation. And to be frank with you, I think nonpartisan politics plays best in the municipal, because there are times that you have, it's not a party line. It's what's the best for the town.
Yeah.
Right.
And the party lines don't always follow what's best for the town.
That's true. Yeah, there's too much agenda and allegiance to coalitions and stuff like that instead of putting the people first. That's probably even true at the national and state level. When we were tallying up the WRLR had a count the vote as it came in kind of thing last year. Was it last year? Yeah. And I was looking at all the different local offices, and everyone said independent on it. Every single one without exception. So I think at the local level, partisanship is not really a thing. Even though most of them, for each of the candidates still somehow identifies with either Democrat, Republican, and two of them identify as Green Party, and one of them is Libertarian. So you mentioned the police, and I want to talk to you about that. That's something that we bring up here on occasion. Obviously, we all know that for a while now, and even before last year, even though last year seemed to be the apex of it, is that there's been a lot of eyes on policing in America, after Derek Chauvin and George Floyd. But even before that, there were problems too. And police reform is a big issue nowadays still. Defunding the police is a phrase that goes around that some people like, some people don't. Some people understand it, some people don't. That kind of thing. What sort of influence and or just direct control does the mayor and the board of a village, specifically Mundelein, have over the police department? Does Mayor Lentz or the board hire and fire chiefs and stuff like that, or how does that work?
Well, first understand that the mayor in the town of Mundelein is a honorary title.
Right.
It is not he's not a mayor of a city, so his power comes strictly from the board.
That's cool.
The 6 sitting trustees must back whatever he sets up on an agenda, or it doesn't fly. He has a tie-breaking vote. He's technically the board president, so he votes only when there's a tie. If there's a consensus of 4 or more, then the trustees are the power base. So yes, we do hire the chief, but from chief on down, deputy chiefs are all chosen by the chief himself. But this last round where we hired a new chief, we had a search. We did extensive interviews, and then a decision was made on who it is, and we vote. And then when we bring it to the public, it's in some cases there's a dissenting vote, and this last time there was a dissenting vote.
Oh, really?
But as long as there's 4 in favor, then the chief is hired.
Interesting. Okay, so has there been any implementation or at least a discussion about any sort of reform? I know Mundelein's a very safe town. There's not a whole lot going on there, but I mean, with all that's going on across the nation, any effect on Mundelein Police Department?
That's what's interesting. I interface as a trustee with other villages of our size. I'm going to tell you that the impact the police have, probably from the negative standpoint, if you want to take it from that standpoint, really resides in the larger cities.
And that's expected.
In the small villages, our police is probably concerned with getting along with the public, getting to know the public, getting to know the people of the town, because they tend to interact with them probably much closer and more positive manner than in a big city where, you've got so many people, the cop is just a cop.
Right.
In our town, we've got all kinds of activities that involve the police department, and they interface. We really don't have a lot of issues. We get one major crime a year kind of thing that hits the news, but for the most part, our guys, I know many of them, and I can tell you that our police department is probably, I don't want to, I respect what they do and how they do it, but most of the guys, I call them common as dirt. They're good guys. You can sit down and you can talk to them, and I've had lunch and dinner with the chief on a personal basis, and he's just a common guy. He's a good guy. He raises his family, and he has the same issues we all have. So.
Okay. Calvin?
Yeah, the defunding thing, the whole negative impact just doesn't reach down to our level.
Right. No, I mean, you made a good point. I mean, most of that stuff has to do with urban situations. That's because that's where most of the nonsense is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have our now and then, somebody wants to, picket and, make their issues known. And we're like, okay, cool. Nobody gets too concerned about it. It's
Right.
kind of a go along, get along.
Right.
Yeah, this is hitting in a different way, and I'm surprised by it, by like the scope of what local politics does, because so far we've brought up some park planning, we've brought up how a village board is integral to choosing the chief of police, which then probably sets a lot of precedents on down. And from where the kids are playing to how the police interact with the citizenry, like all of a sudden the board is already that much more important and that much more impactful to that local community than I think the federal government is in comparison, because it's your daily life, it's where you reside, it's what's controlled there. I guess what else is there? Is zoning part of it, as mentioned before? What are the major things that take up a village board's time? I guess, like, what sectors? Because I want to keep being surprised by like how much of an impact it has on my like day-to-day life.
Well, let me add this to it, Calvin, is keep in mind that as 6 sitting board members, as 6 people who live in the community, you might find that the rule of 6 degrees of separation, those 6 people probably know, between all 6 of us, half the town. Right. So we have a personal relationship that goes out into that community. So the things that we work on mostly, ordinances. David was involved in conversations with me when the state legalized marijuana, and we decided that we were going to be involved in that process.
Yeah.
So, we have to create an ordinance that allows it, an ordinance that dictates what's going to be done. Even recently, we expanded the ordinance by allowing on-site consumption at our marijuana facility. Can I use the name?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rise. Good people, very nice people. I like them. They're good.
Well, that's because they're stoned all the time.
No.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I've never met one who's like that, but okay.
I'm just totally joking. I have no idea.
Ordinances are probably the most impactful, and zoning falls under that category. Zoning plays an important issue when it comes to developers and people wanting to build things in the community. Something as simple as, hey, you want to raise chickens in Mundelein, we have to pass an ordinance to allow that. You want to build a 4-story building and our current ordinance only allows 3, then it's our job to take a look at it and determine if that ordinance should be changed.
Right.
That's probably a biggest portion of what we do, is adjusting the ordinances and zoning laws to facilitate the growth of the town without busting it at the seams, so to speak.
Sure.
Wow.
How speedy of a process is changing an ordinance? Like, let's say somebody wants, I want to build a 4-story building, but your ordinance says only 3, and I want to start it next week.
Well, there's 2 ways that it can be done. One is to change the ordinance, and that the staff might come to us and say, hey, look, we think the ordinance is out of date. It hasn't been looked at in 10 years. They'll review it. They'll make recommendations. We'll review it. We'll make our thoughts known kind of behind the scenes. And then in a board meeting, we'll open it up and to a general discussion. And usually you could change an ordinance within 3 months. With the proper background to it. The second way is to create what we call a variance process. You can actually ask to have a variance to the ordinance. For example, the ordinance says 3, but you say, hey, I'm special because I'm in a place where 4 is necessary and it's not going to obstruct, it's not going to do whatever. And we'll look at it, and it goes through planning and zoning, and they make a recommendation, and the board then votes. And it can be as simple as, yeah, we're going to give you a variance because we see what you're trying to do, and it's not impacting the village that way.
Right.
And those kind of things, variance can happen just as quickly. You can get a variance in 3 months with the process. So,
okay. I'm assuming that anything a village does a city does, a town does, has to be in compliance with all state rules, right? You can't somehow contradict the state.
Interestingly enough,
Ooh.
the state doesn't have a lot of rules. So there are different levels of rules. So we are a home rules village, which gives us a leg up. We get to dictate a lot of our own rules. We don't have to play a certain way. If you're not home rule, then you have to abide at a different level. The state mostly sticks their nose in only when it comes to money.
Naturally.
If it has to do with money, they're going to get involved. So,
yeah.
But otherwise, building codes, fire code. There's a fire code that goes all the way to the state, but it's pretty liberal. The local codes are usually more restrictive.
Oh, okay, interesting. And but does the board decide these codes? I mean, what? I'm just saying, you're not a fireman. You've never been involved in the fire department. What would you know about fire codes? In order
nothing.
To make one?
Okay. In my case, I do know something, but let's just assume for a second nothing. Right. What it really comes down to is that our main decision is to hire the right kind of people on staff who can feed us the information. Do you have a good fire chief, a good public works director? Do you have whatever that position is that will give you the appropriate data and information? We rely upon our staff to give us the information we need so that we can digest it and then, make a decision on it. Staffs is extremely important. You got to have a good staff. If you don't have good staff, people that, are honest and forthright. And,
absolutely. Yeah, sure. It's like a president having a crappy cabinet.
Yeah.
What positions are on staff? So.
Well, you've got the village administrator, who's the head of all staff.
Is that Gunther right now? Just
that's
curious.
Eric Gunther. Yeah.
Okay. Who was the chief of police?
He was the chief of police. He retired as chief of police and then became our village administrator.
Okay.
And there was, I know there was controversy around it, but to be frank with you, over the last year that he's been the administrator, he's done a wonderful job. He is not a micromanager. He allows staff to do what they need to do, and he's a good guy and an easy guy to talk to. He's a very pleasant person. So the key players are economic development, which oversees zoning and building and anything to do with incoming construction. Our building department, which is your health and safety people. Those are the people that ensure the building's being built in a healthy and safe manner. Finance, most finance departments are pretty small because all they're dealing with is just paying the bills, money in and money out. Right. You have general administrative staff to support all of that. We have an IT group, things that the public don't see. The public's going to see mostly the building department, economic development. Those are probably the two most important outside of the fire and police. The largest department in the whole organization is the police department. It's 54 sworn officers, I think it is. It's 54. A little more than that with supporting staff. Public Works, the people see it, but really don't have any idea what Public Works does. That's
Public Works is a specific department of things, right? It's a lot of going around and emptying the public garbage cans and taking care of the parks and stuff like that, right?
Public Works is much deeper than that. Public Works, your tree comes down, it's Public Works that sends out our horticulture or our arborist to find out why it came down. It's the team that goes out and grinds up that material. it's roads, it's sewer, it's water. You drink water and use the toilet. You've just used major functions of the Public Works Department.
Does the police department count under that category or classification of public works?
No, it's its own department.
Okay, interesting. Well, I want to talk to you after the show. What about Calvin? Do you have a question? I just lost mine.
Sure. I mean, I have so many because my mind, I don't know why my mind has like been using all of these things, has been in small towns where, processes and procedures like these were running, but I never, I guess, made the connection in my head that this is handled locally, that there's a local village board that takes care of this. I grew up in a small village, so
that's why we're having this show.
Yeah, this is amazing.
That's exactly why.
I was even researching this before the show, but it's really just dawning on me now how important this is. So I guess there's a couple things I wanted to ask about. Biking infrastructure, that's going to fall under zoning and what the village board covers. Have you guys had any interactions with biking infrastructure?
Biking is in bicycles?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
they made a huge
Yeah, that's one of the things that to be honest with you, most projects involve walking paths and bike paths as part of our negotiation strategy. Take 176, it's a state highway, but it was us that pushed for that new bike path that comes down along 176, and as part of that, we also pushed to have all the power lines and all the overhead lines buried, so they not only cleaned it up, but made it, beautified it, but gave us a bike path that was, I think that bike path 6 feet long or 6 feet wide and connects all the way over to the countywide bike path system. So
nice. Yeah, no, it looks really great. And getting those cables underground is those cables are so ugly. It just,
that's one of this board's mandates is that whenever a major construction project occurs, we go after that fact. We want to get them out of sight. There's not only from a beautification, but it also helps to reduce the amount of outages. You get power underground and you're less affected by weather.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good point. And people writing like if something happens, there's a storm and a line goes down on a bike path, that wouldn't go so well. So let me ask you a question about obviously at a local level, it's far more of a direct democracy than it is. I mean, it's still representational. They're electing you to implement their will in the community, that kind of thing. But again, it's so much more intimate. People know each other and that kind of thing than on the federal level or even the state level. And you have your what do they call it? The public forums. Is that what you call it when people from the community get together and yell at you about something?
Oh well, there's two ways you can do, or a number of ways you can do that. You can corner us on the street and just bend our ear, call us up.
That's what's really cool about it.
And talk to us. But a lot of times the public wants it on the record, so they'll show up our board meetings, and at the board meetings we have a public commentary time that you can stand up and say anything you want, to the board. It's not an interactive, it's just a one-way, communication.
Do you have a lot of Mundeleinians involved do they show up at your board meetings?
No, and I laugh because it's one of the shocking things that I found becoming a trustee. We can be talking, I think our budget hearings are coming up here soon, and if we get one or two people showing up to ask us questions, it'll be remarkable. If chickens were to go on to the agenda, we would fill the place up with people wanting to either complain or support.
Yeah, you need to let people have chickens. That Chicago can do it. You can do it. Anyway,
just for the record, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. What's the problem? You just don't get to have roosters. So because everybody's like, oh, they're noisy. Just don't have roosters. That's all.
I'm just saying that it's the strangest things that people will show up and complain about.
Okay, so I actually asked that as a segue to the next question or issue. Let's talk about Thorntons, because I just want to use that as an example of like a direct democracy at a local level. Now, Calvin doesn't know about this, but in Mundelein over the last year, Thorntons is a gas station company or something like that. And they wanted to build a gas station in a certain area of town where there was currently a restaurant and they were just going to tear down the restaurant and put up the Thorntons. Well, the Mundeleinians freaked out and said, absolutely not. That is going to, for a whole list of reasons why they don't want it. And I agree with them. I think it's a terrible idea. But unfortunately, I live in Grace Lake and I'm Mundelein, so I can't say anything. But I actually had Nadine and somebody else from Mundelein on my radio show before to complain about it. And I promised Nadine I would bring this up tonight. As an example of, again, direct democracy, because I'm assuming a lot of people showed up for those meetings, right?
Yes.
Okay.
They did, but unfortunately, like so many things that occur in life, they were misinformed.
Okay, so then unravel this process for me, because I want to hear about this, and I think people need to know this. Please.
Well, Thornton's isn't the one actually developing it. They hire a developer who actually builds it, who they lease the building from.
Okay.
And before anything was even presented to the village, it never did get to the board. Rumors start. It's going to be a truck stop, and they want gaming, and we're going to have trucks parked there all night and idling, and those were absolutely not true. Thornton's makes their money not selling diesel fuel and gasoline. No service station today, as I call them in my youth, makes their money off of fuel. They make their money off of you running in and getting a bottle of pop and paying $2.50 for something you can get for 50 cents at the grocery store.
Yes, that's true.
Convenience.
They're called convenience stores.
Right.
So what they wanted to build was a convenience store, and the gasoline gets you to come in because it's convenience. You're filling up, run into store, spend $5, $10, $20 if you're, so inclined, and run back out and put the car back into gear and take off. So Thornton's looked at the corner, and one of the things they came and said, well, it's going to be, people are going to drive to Thornton's. And it's like, no, it's backwards. Thornton's builds it there because it's the intersection of two major state roads, 45 going north, 176 going east and west.
Right.
They looked at it and said, X number of cars coming this way, and they're going to turn in here where they wouldn't turn across the street because we all drive as convenience. If we have to go across traffic to do it to a gas station, we'll drive another mile to get to a gas station on the right-hand side versus the left-hand side. It's the nature of the human condition.
No, it's just, because you don't want to have to pull out across two lanes to get to where you want to go. No, absolutely.
So convenience store people who have gas stations build them where it is convenient for people to get in and out quickly. So some of what they were espousing to was totally inaccurate. The other side of this is that there is actually more to the issue than the restaurant was already in trouble, by the way.
Sure.
She wanted to sell because she needed to get out from under it. COVID had taken her down hard.
Oh, wow.
The building behind it, we call it the Hoffman property. Most people aren't aware of the fact that that is an EPA dump site. That thing, you better have some deep pockets if you're going to buy that property and clean it up, because they were dumping waste oil in the backside of that thing back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s when everybody was doing it. Now it's an EPA problem, and they have to meet certain requirements if they tear that facility down and use that property. So you better have a lot of money. So whoever ends up with this, and by the way, Thornton's backed off. We don't know where it is at this moment. But whoever buys it is going to be spending a lot of money, not only to tear the buildings down and to develop it, but to clean it up and make it appropriate to whatever goes in there.
Is it dangerous right now? Is it toxic?
EPA has different levels. I've dealt with those people. Yeah, I don't think it's toxic other than from a groundwater standpoint. The facility was a machine shop, and they were just dumping the waste.
I remember that.
Oil. Yeah.
I knew the guy who owned it.
Oh. Yeah, so they'd walk out the back door and dump it in the, on the ground.
Wow, my God.
Seep into the ground, and away you go. Not uncommon in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Right.
Not really cool today.
Well, never cool, but yeah.
Yeah.
More understood why it's not cool today. Yeah.
We have a better understanding of how to quit doing that crap.
Yeah. Yeah, because it turns out
Did that get into the democracy part that you were looking for, Dave?
Well, I was just well, one of the biggest dangers to a democratic society is an uninformed population. So yes, actually, so like, and I understand, like, even as a bartender, I'd hear things from Kerston or Holly Kim or Aaron Cartwright Weinstein or Jennifer Bennett or whatever, because at the radio show I had connections to these people, and then I'd hear somebody at the bar talk about it. I'm like, that's not what is happening, and so like, and you just sort of know nowadays, especially like with the whole social media thing, which we're on, but is you get a lot of nonsense to wade through, and it's really quite annoying. So yeah, absolutely it did. I was hoping for a more a greater like example of like, did the people's outcry make Thornton back off? Would you say? Okay. That's the impetus of my question, is like, how much power do the people actually like you as directly as possible? But okay.
No, and I'm going to tell you that in this particular situation, all of us listened to them.
Yeah.
We spent most of our time as we talked to people trying to educate them in what was really going on. I don't know that Thornton's has totally backed off. I do know that we heard that they had removed diesel fuel from the picture, that they just want the convenience store and the gas. The biggest issue came when they presented to the planning and zoning. There was a question about lighting and a question about fencing. And to be frank with you, it wasn't so much that we couldn't give them a variance, it's that they did a piss poor job of explaining it. And they backed off and said, we need to go back to the drawing board and get our act together so we can come and do a better job. So.
Right. That's really interesting. The one main reason why I was, just again, opposed to it, not that my voice counts at all because I don't live there, but was I do know that Ford and Chevrolet as companies have said that they, by the year 2035, that the vast majority of the cars that they're going to sell will all be electric. So I'm like, so why would you just build another gas station when in 14 years you have to change it?
Because
gas will be mostly obsolete. That was my, like, you're just wasting money. I mean, 14 years is not a long time. Go ahead.
I think if you look at the last 30 years, maybe in my lifetime, you could pull into a service station, you could get your tires checked, your oil checked, your windshield washed.
There's little things you can buy a pack of cigarettes. Remember that, and put it in your shoulder.
Yeah, not quite that far back, but
that's like 40s.
And the station actually did service to vehicles. You would pull in and you could get an oil change, you could get your car work done. And in my lifetime, that has separated. You go to a service facility now, you roll into a gas station.
You pump your own gas.
Into them as much to get a bottle of pop, wife a pack of cigarettes, whatever, as I do gas.
Right.
So I think that as business people, they look at the future and say, yes, it could be electric at some point, but for the next 14 years, I'm going to make my money off of gas, getting people in for gasoline. What I'm really selling them is convenience store items.
Okay, fair enough. I guess.
Now, what would it take to pull the pumps out and put rapid electric charging stations, and they're still selling the same thing? I'm selling you convenience store items. You just happen to be stopping here to get your car charged.
Right.
Those kind of businesses are very good at reacting and changing as the environment. But the core of their business is still, I'm selling you convenience items.
A Snickers bar for $3, right?
Yeah. And like I said, you could go down to the grocery store and buy it, but most of us are too lazy to go to the grocery store and buy a 6-pack.
Well, yeah, because you can park like right next to the door. You can run in and run out within like 2 minutes and get what you need. It is really convenient in a lot of ways, but they're going to charge you for your laziness. So it's like a sin tax.
And that's why Thornton's wanted that corner. So you come down 176, pull in, get your stuff, pull back out, and keep going.
Right.
So it's really about the convenience store thing.
Okay.
It has nothing
you're making
to do
really
with
good
gas.
Let's say that the board, yay or nay, voted that particular situation. Thornton's is there because the board said so, or they're not there because the board said so. Is there a way to counter that with like a public ballot if somebody wanted to collect enough signatures? Does that exist on this level of governance?
It does, and it does not.
Okay.
So it does.
That's why you're on the show.
Depending
Hammer
on
out those contradictions.
For example, in the does, we were implementing a sign ordinance, and one of the signs that was in question was Bill's Pizza had an old antique sign. It was a neon sign. And because they got a petition and got it up, the board saw fit to exempt them from the ordinance concerning that signage up.
It's iconic. It's a part of Mundelein's history.
Yeah. So yes, in that particular situation, there was what you would call direct governance, in the fact that people, rallied and said, "Hey, this is what we want," and we listened and said, "Okay, you can have that."
How'd that work out for Vodrax?
Vodrax?
Is that the right name?
That's in Libertyville.
What's the? You're right. What's the chicken? The buffalo wings.
Well, they've upgraded their sign. and
they didn't make the exception.
We went into COVID and we said, look, this is not the time to be dealing with it, not to put a burden on businesses. And this is another time where we looked at it and said, we're going to set that aside for a while. That's not something we need to worry about right now, because the businesses need all the help they can get. Okay,
so I wanted to put a pin in the phrase eminent domain, and I want to say something real quick here. Serena Larkin is tuning in. Thank you, Serena, for watching. Mundelein already has almost 2 times the number of gas stations per capita than the rest of Lake County. Why do we need another? And that is another thing I heard about. Like, why do you want more gas stations? You go down 45, you hit like 7 before you get to, 83.
So have you ever counted how many barber shops we've got in town?
Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's at the north end.
Right.
And that isn't including stylists. So it really doesn't come down to us saying, how many do we have and do we really need more? It's a free market driven situation. That property is zoned for commercial, which is what a service station falls under. Now, could that property be sold to somebody who wants to build something commercially other than a gas station? Yes. But right now, the money is flowing in that direction.
You're not having any other bidders? Anybody saying, hey, what about this, that? No, that's too bad.
Well, first of all, you have to understand, I'm betting that the EPA cleanup alone is going to cost $1 million.
Well, if the EPA is, it's not an EPA problem. I mean, it's the Mundelein business did it. Is the federal government offering any funding to get it cleaned up?
No, the problem's too small for them. They might be able to get some funding. What I'm saying by EPA is that it's you have to do site cleanup to any property in town, no matter what. You have to meet these EPA requirements for the quality of the soil. They have to do what they call phase 1 and phase 2 tests.
Right.
So we're not going to let a building be built there unless they clean it up. So there's a lot of money.
I didn't know. I wasn't understanding that part. I got you. I got you.
That's
so it has to be, no matter who buys it, they have to clean it up first.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I thought you were. No, I didn't even know what I was thinking. Okay, cool. I got you. Thank you, Serena, for the question. Very cool. So let's talk about.
So let me back up.
No, go ahead. Sure.
So we don't necessarily. I don't think there's a board member that's saying, "Oh, let's have another gas station." What we really say is, okay, somebody wants to buy the piece of property, clean them up, and put a building there and do something with it. So we don't go out looking for these to bring in. People come to us and say, this is what we want to do. And then we have to decide whether it works within the zoning law. The zoning law already exists. We already have that zoning in place. Legally speaking, we can't really deny them. It's zoned for what they want to do. The only thing we can legally stop is if they want a variance. For example, there's a building here in town that was a low-income housing, Fairhaven, I think it's called.
It is.
There was a lot of people that said, why are you allowing this to happen? Why are you putting low-income housing right in downtown?
Yes.
And the technicality of it was we had no way of stopping it. They bought the property. It was zoned appropriately, and they built a health and safety building, a building that met our building code. And as long as they did that, you really can't say no.
That's very interesting, and I've heard about things like that before. Yeah, and even again as a bartender in Mundelein, I heard lots of people complaining about that place, which I always thought was kind of lame. I've delivered pizzas there. I never had a problem. I mean,
Well, I'm not saying it is a problem. I'm just saying that
I understand that, but like I know a lot of people in Mundelein that were against it. And then they went to church on Sundays. Let's talk about eminent domain real quick, shall we?
Sure.
Yeah.
And the recycling building that was bought by Mundelein. And I'm not here to judge anybody, but I remember that happening. I remember talking to you about it before it happened, when it was happening, and obviously the outcome of what happened. And there's again several people in Mundelein who thought that, okay, this is when a government oversteps its boundaries. This is when you start forcing a deal upon a private owner to take away their business because you want to build something else there, and they have to take the deal. Even if it's a good deal or a bad deal, they have to take it legally. Can you run through that for us and tell us what happened and give us the logistics of that or the legalities of it and why it happened that way? Some people are like, this is great. You guys are going to build some new housing over here. It's going to be fabulous. And other people are like, well, you can't just go in and say, like, by the way, we're taking your business. Thanks. Go ahead.
Well, first thing is we don't take the business. Second, we don't force it. It's the court that actually dictates to us what we're going to have to pay to them. We can't make them a low ball offer. The court says this is what you must pay them for it because this is what the market will bear.
Can the owner of the company turn it down?
He originally turned it down before we went to court. Okay, now, right. I want you to understand, long before I was a trustee, they've been fighting with this guy.
Right.
Tractor trailers parked in the wrong places, coming in and breaking up the street. There were all kinds of issues. And at one point, the village made a decision again before me to quit fining the guy because we just kept fining him. And we said to him, look, we're going to give you some money and leave town. And the original deal, to be frank with you, I can't give you the specifics. I don't think it's been publicly made yet, but I can tell you that the original deal we made him was more lucrative than the deal he ended up with. Property helped him with financing, tax mitigation. We were trying to keep him in town. There was property that we were willing to, hand to him and make as part of this agreement.
Just to relocate his business.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, we didn't want to put him out of business. We just wanted to relocate it because of where it was located. The building was a piece of shit.
Oh, it was disgusting. Regardless of what you guys did to the guy, whatever, it was just an eyesore. I'm glad it's gone. Oh.
So when we go into eminent domain for this kind of a situation, it's a judge that says, this is what you're going to pay him. And we paid him, if I remember right, and I'm going off of memory, so I may be wrong on this number, but it was almost twice what the market value was. So we have an appraiser that goes in and appraises it, and then the judge says, no, this is what you're going to pay him for it.
Is it a local? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the appraisers are local people.
Local judge?
He gets an appraiser, we get an appraiser, everybody gets appraisers, by the way. There's multiple appraisals. On top of that, we paid every dollar for everything he moved. So if it costs $1 million for him to move that facility, we had to pay that on top of it.
Where did he go? Did he go somewhere else?
He bought a building in Waukegan, very nice facility, for a lot less than what this facility was worth. And we paid for everything to be moved to his new facility, which was 7 figures. Oof. So in this situation, I won't say that all eminent domains are like this, but in this situation, I don't really understand the stubbornness of a man to say, I'm in a shitty building. Why don't I improve my lot in life by taking this money and taking all this money they're going to give me to move and go find a place that I'm going to have a better facility and easier time and meet the local zoning ordinances and be able to work with the people. He decided to fight it.
Well, I mean, the only thing I can think of is like, this is my business. I built this business. This is where I want to stay. It's, that kind of thing. I don't want to be forced out of anything.
But we were
it's like people being
away, just the building.
Okay, no, I'm guessing it was just pride. Is my guess that just some sort of like a family being forced out of their home because developments around the area and the raising tax. Well, I don't want to leave. This is my home. That kind of thing. Even if I'm going to go to a better place, this is my home. Too bad, that kind of. I don't. But as long as I guess he worked out for him, he's fine. But yeah, no, that place was just disgusting. When is the new buildings going to be built?
Well, there's 3 properties that are still being negotiated. There's 3 properties up the front on 176 there, and the developer is working with those 3 property owners to acquire those. He's already signed an agreement with us to buy the properties. So keep in mind, the old lumberyard.
Phil Bean.
We owned that and bought that for pennies on the dollar, by the way. A couple $100,000 for a multi-million-dollar lot. So we're selling all of that to the developer. He is actually paying us cash money. I forget the number. It's a 7-figure number, which in this particular case we'll put back into our reserves. And we're not 100% whole, but we're pretty close.
All right, great.
So, yeah.
We got about 9 minutes left here. Calvin, do you have any questions, comments?
Yeah, I got a big one. I wanted to circle back to policing, and we mentioned that the village board handles ordinances. And I wanted to bring up an ordinance that we brought up a few times on this show, and that's the ECPS. Now, it's being developed in Chicago, but the idea of it, the core of it could, I believe, be implemented anywhere. So the core of it is that there's going to be a separate board of people. None of them can previously have been police or worked for the DA. And they're going to be elected by the people. They must have at least 3 years of community service experience. And now they have control over the police department, hiring, firing, incident review, training protocols. And it seems to work, or seems to be a lot better idea to me. It's direct democracy over the police department for every officer, not just the chief on down. And it makes it so that there can't just be this good old boy system inside the police department, where if somebody does a wrong, the other doesn't necessarily report it. Maybe they just tell the chief, like, oh, I saw stuff that we wouldn't approve of, but I won't go on the record because I don't want to break the thin blue line. So there's a chance for injustice there where the police themselves, and it's not right to us. Or they work with the courts, and the courts they work with on a regular basis. So they're close.
They're in cahoots. Yeah.
So I'd rather see a democratically elected board on there. And I guess I'm not trying to force you on the record or put you in a bad spot, but what do you think of democratizing systems like that? Maybe if it's not police, maybe it's fire, but more direct democracy and more the community has control over its public servants.
I think in major metropolitan areas like Chicago, bigger cities where the police are a long ways away from their city council people, I think it's not a bad idea. In a village of 32,000 people, you do have a duly elected board that has direct jurisdiction over the police here because of the community size.
Is that your board exactly?
Yeah.
And it's not just electing or appointing the chief. It's more than that.
Give you an example. We had a situation where an undercover bust was done in our town, and the people who owned the facility didn't care for the way it was handled. The case was brought before the board. Now, in those situations, it falls under what we call our executive session. Those notes usually don't come out until after the session, but we actually sat and listened to what the police did, and then counsel for the facility, makes their argument as to why this wasn't right. In this particular case, it was for prostitution. So
in Mundelein?
Yeah.
Oh man, I missed that.
What, you mean you didn't know where it was?
No, I didn't. I wish I did. Go ahead.
It was a massage parlor.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I think I went to high school with them. Go ahead.
So sometimes you'll hear in our board meetings, the mayor will say, tonight we have an executive session. So that by state law, we're allowed to go into executive session to discuss land purchases or sales and human resource issues, which may involve firemen, it may involve policemen, it may involve public works people. It is human resources within the community, which can be, a policeman is being some issue that's going on, and we have to decide on, sanctions, or do we put a permanent note in their file? So we do have direct involvement in those kind of things. Usually when it gets to the board, it's usually something that's not, it's pretty major. Somebody's really done something stupid, screwed up, for the board to be involved.
Well, that's
eventually
good to know.
Those executive session notes come out once the situation's passed, and nothing could be affected. Land is, because we often are making deals on land that we don't want somebody else to jack the price or benefit from it, kind of thing. But human resources stuff, we've I can tell you that the board has been involved in terminations of people, reprimands, permanent file reprimands, all those things we get involved in. So a village municipal government is probably as close to the ideal situation of having a group of just citizens, who are 6 of us are sitting in what I would call judgment of those kind of things. And we are that board that maybe a major city like Chicago needs to separately, because we're not, unlike a city councilman, we're not on the graph. There's nothing that we can gain from, slapping a policeman's hand over something. In city of Chicago, for example, there's just too much power, and breaking it down and giving a separate group. But in a village like ours, we have 6 citizens that are sitting as board members that make those decisions.
That's good to know. And again, this is why we have you on the show, is to tell us about these sorts of things. That's very refreshing to know.
Getting chills. Like I'm just like so impressed and so happy. And now before I didn't know that people that lived in villages had this much power, that they could be coming up to these town halls or these board meetings and voicing their opinion directly to the people that were elected by them to change something. So I'm really happy for them in a way. I guess I just thought that's not how it was, but
I'm going to tell you that the power even lies stronger than that if people want to take advantage of it. I don't know a board member currently that doesn't have a standing policy. If you lived in town and you said, hey, I want to come to the board meeting and be on record, we don't get interaction at that point. But let's say you want interaction. You want to talk to me and hear my ideas back, or, what do I think about what you're talking about? Pick up the phone, drop an email and say, hey, meet me at area coffee shop, and we'll give you the time. You actually can, where you would have to make an appointment with, one of your state senators.
Brad
maybe
Schneider, right, exactly.
Chris Boss, or anybody above a municipal level. At municipal level, I sit with people all the time, and listen to them, and they listen to what my responses are, so that it's a more honest level of government, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people need to take more advantage of it.
And I think that's one of the beauties, again, of like local politics and local politicians, is that it's just, besides the fact of its importance and its implications, it's just far more accessible.
Yes.
It's like, I found when I first had my radio show and I started asking like local politicians to come on, they're all like, oh yeah, sure. I was like, wow, okay, you could do that. It was really cool. And such as yourself, I became good friends with a lot of them. It's very cool. So with your, real quick, we only have a minute left here. But like with your power or the influence you have on the police department, and with Mundelein's like traditional rivalry with Libertyville, have you ever thought about just telling the police to militarily take over Libertyville?
No.
Sorry,
like whenever they beat us in football, have you ever decided to maybe just go and like arrest any Libertyville person, whatever, driving through Mundelein, just tag them?
But
I'm
no.
just- I'm kidding.
And
Now I'm
second
back
of
in
all,
my
we
small
just beat
town.
them.
Yeah.
We just beat them, so we're okay.
I'm just kidding.
All's fair in love and war.
That's true. That's true. So we only have a couple seconds left. Kerston Russell, thank you so much for coming on the show. Village
Welcome.
trustee
Anytime.
on the board.
You want me on again? Call me.
Yes, absolutely. Because I actually have more questions about. There's more to talk about for sure. But
Anything.
you really enlightened, I think, the viewers and myself and Calvin. This, especially with that police thing. That's extremely refreshing to know.
I want to
I think
there's I just want to throw up real quick some links for folks if you're watching. I imagine most villages have a website, and within that website, if you navigate this will be posted in the description later, folks. So don't frantically write it now. It should be clickable soon. But yeah, you can get their contact information right there and learn more about what's going on. And I encourage everyone to take this great information. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Because I think this information will really help a lot of people once they realize that they have the power of like a good, tight, almost direct democracy, if not direct democracy apparatus in their village. I think it's something where they can get cued in, they can start interacting, and I think that just leads to more and more improvement, more and more communication and information exchange between them and their representatives at that local level. I'm truly blown away. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Anytime.
Thank you, sir. All right. Thank you for tuning in again to another episode of the Illinois Green Party series with your host, David Rich and Calvin Tomasco, and our great guest tonight, Kerston Russell. Till next time, be good, be green.